All right, Math 1 people, here we go. Module 6 review. A taxi cab charges $4.50 per mile. A customer was charged $33.50 for 6 miles. So what we need to do is identify what X and Y represent. It's always our first order of business. I'm going to put it over here just because I have some workspace. X and Y represent. I can also do that by labeling. So we see we've got dollars and we've got miles. The dollars, the cost is based on the miles, so this will be miles here, and this will be cost in dollars. So once I know that, miles and cost, then the next thing for me to do, you can see our goal here is table graph equation. So the equation is going to help us make a table and a graph. So we should always keep this goal in mind, the equation. And you'll recall that after we figure out what X and Y represent, then we're trying to find the rate of change. So that's this part right here. That's also going to help us fill out the table eventually, but we can't necessarily start with the table, because if we need to start with the table, we need to find what the start is, and that's the y-intercept. So let's see if we can figure out the rate of change and the y-intercept, then maybe we can say, can we do our table? Okay. Our taxi cab charges $4.50 per mile. Now here's that key word that helps us recognize that this is a rate. It's every mile, it's $4.50. So the rate of change is $4.50 because it's per 1 mile. So we're saying this is change in Y is $4.50, change in X is 1, right? $4.50 for every 1 mile. If it said for every 2 miles, then it would be a different rate of change, so we need to pay attention to that. So we've got our rate of change. A customer was charged $33.50 for 6 miles. So this is not an every, right? It's not for every 6 miles they're charged this. This is just a dollar amount, so that's a Y value, and a mile amount, so that's an X value. So what we have is a point here. So if we were doing a table, an X and Y, we could say, I have 1 value for 1 row of the table. But that's all I have. I do not have my start, so I don't have my y-intercept here. Right? It doesn't say how much for 0 miles. So we don't know this one yet. We can say there's some charge for 0 miles. We don't know what it is yet. Is it 0? Is it 10? Is it $12.50? I don't know. That's what I have to find out. So that's where finding my y-intercept comes in. But I do have my rate of change. M equals 450. X equals 6. And Y equals 3350. So this is one value of X. We can call it X1 and Y1. There's other values that we'll find in the table, but for right now, this is what we have. So I've got Y, X, and M. That means I can substitute in this to my Y equals MX plus B format. 450 times 6 plus B. So remember, Y equals MX plus B is our slope-intercept form. This is a really handy form because it tells us what the rate of change and the y-intercept is, the slope and the starting point are, just by the way it's arranged. And it's also useful because if we don't know one of these, we can fill in the rest and solve for this. So we didn't know B, we didn't know the y-intercept, so we filled in the other values we knew. So 450 times 6, that would be 9 times 3, or 27. Just going to check that. Oops, 4.5 times 6 equals, 27. Plus B equals 3350. So now I've got to subtract 27 from both sides. And I've got B equals 6.5, or 650. All right, so now we can say when X is 0, it's 650. Now, some of you might go, wait, how did you figure that out? Remember, the y-intercept is right here, so that's wherever X equals 0. I can write my equation right here. I can say, look, y equals, I have M, this is M, I have B. So I've got 450 times x plus 650. So a reminder, our equation is going to have a y and an x, and those stay there because there are many possible values that could satisfy this. In other words, the taxi cab could drive any number of miles, and the charge would be any number of dollars based on those miles. What we did here was we just said, here's one combination we know works. So that's how we use that here. Here's another value. We know that they were charged $4.50. Excuse me. No, they were charged for 6 miles. They were charged $33.50. So there might be others we could use. Maybe I'm not going to go in order here because I didn't plan ahead. But for 1 would be $6.50 plus $4.50. So that'd be $11. You know, if you want to use scratch paper at the back to really sort of work this out, you're welcome to do that. We could say, you know, 450 times 1 plus 650 is 450 plus 650. And then you could do 450 times 2 plus 650. That's $9 plus 650. That would equal $15.50. So I'd have 2 and $15.50. Now, why is a table helpful like here? Well, because we got to put it on a graph. So I know that I'm going to have at least 6 miles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's fine. And I know I've got to get up to $33.50 in terms of dollars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got 10 increments here. If I did each of them $3, I'd be off my chart up here. So I'm going to do each of them $4. That'll be $4, $8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. So you can see I've got plenty of room. Okay, so 0 is $6.50. This is just approximate, and that's okay. 1 is going to be 11. 2 is going to be 15.50, so just barely under the 16 there. And 6 is going to be 33.50. And you can see that sure enough, those are pretty much all in a line, even though I was just approximating. Okay. If you have a value that's not in a line, then you know you've calculated something incorrectly. Maybe you didn't get the y-intercept, and so you have one that's, you know, way off here. Or maybe one of your table values wasn't correct. So that's the top line here. We've got, we actually did the rate of change y-intercept in equation in order to get us the table to construct a graph. And that was based on what we were given. Right? We were given the rate, this is our m. We were given an x and a y. So we have to use our algebra tools to find the y-intercept that gives us the equation that can generate the table. Use your equation to determine whether the taxi cab would charge $6.50 for a 12-mile trip. So 12 miles, that's an x value. $6.50 is a y value. So I have, or 60.50. 60.50, does that equal rate of change times my x value plus 650. Let's do 450 times 12, 54 plus 650. Does that equal 60.50? Why, yes it does. 54 plus 6 is 60, 50 cents. So we say 650 equals, or 60.50, excuse me, equals 60.50. Yes. How much would a 100-mile trip cost? So we're looking at what if the x value is 100? So we say, well, y equals 450 times 100 plus 650. So 450 times 100 is going to be 450 plus 650. So this would be $456.50. So I'd recommend not taking a cab if you're going 100 miles, because that's a lot of money. All right, an Elk Grove limo service costs $26 for a 6-mile trip and charges $58 for a 14-mile trip. Notice we don't have an every, right? We just have it's $26 for this mile, but it's not for every mile, or it's not $26 for each 6-mile trip. So there's no every, monthly, per mile, each. There's no words in here that are indicating a rate, something that goes on and on. So I don't have a rate here. So rate of change is something I'm going to have to calculate. It's not given to me. And this is where maybe a table will help us. So I'm given 2 data points. So X is going to be, just like what was before, miles, and Y is going to be cost. So that means for a 6-mile trip, I'm going to leave a little space here. A 6-mile trip, it was $26. And for a 14-mile trip, it was $58. So now we're going to use the rate of change, the formula, the difference in Y over the difference in X. So that's 58 minus 26 over 14 minus 6. So this is going to be 32 over 8, which equals 4. So the rate of change is 4. Now, remember, this is cost, right? This is change in Y over change in X. So we're saying this is 4 over 1, $4 for every 1 mile. I'm going to even put $4 here to remind myself. That's the rate of change. And then Y equals 4x. And then I don't know what B is. So you're going to use the same process as here. Let's see, am I getting a little bit off? There we go. I'm going to use the same process as I did here, which is that I have an M value now. I have an X and a Y. I need to find what the Y-intercept is. Here I have either value of X and Y would work. So M equals 4. I'm going to go with this one. X equals 6. Y equals 26. So I have Y equals 4M, that's what M is, times X plus B. 26 equals 4 times 6 is 24, plus B. So B is going to have to equal 2, right? That's what B would be in order for this to be equal. So the Y-intercept is 2. So I have 4x plus 2. Okay, knowing that, now I can maybe fill out a table. I can say 0 is going to be $2. Let's go 2 and 4. So 2 is going to make this 8, plus 2 is 10. 4 is going to make this 16, plus 2 is 18. So you can see I'm going up by 2 here, I'm going up by 8 here. If you want to keep going, 8, 10, 12, we can do that. This would be 34, 42, 50, and 58. You don't need to create a table that's that extensive. What I'm going to be looking for in a table is, do you at least have 2? 3 is going to be better because it's going to tell you, are you consistent with your linear relationship? But as long as you have 2 values that you can use to plot, that's fine, as long as you're accurate with them. So minimum is 2. My advice is at least 3 or 4. It's also going to give you a sense of scale. So, you know, if you have 1 point here and 1 point here and it's 1 and 2, I'm going to say, you know, that's not great. So, you know, use your head about this. And give me a table that's going to actually represent the situation. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20, and cost. So 14 is going to be $58. So my scale isn't going to work, the same scale I used. I went up by 4s, but that's going to make it pretty... I'm going to run out at 40, so I'd run out here at 10. It could work. Yeah, why not? I'll use the same one. So you can see that there's a little bit of a, aesthetics. It's sort of, what do you like? How is the graph going to help you graph it? So if it means that you're putting dots, like tiny little dots, and then you run a loop and you only use this much of the graph, then it's probably not going to be a very accurate graph. Easy to lose points if you're not spreading yourself out enough to give yourself the room. 0, 2, so that's that one. Got to be careful there that I didn't go 2, 0, because there's a nice 2 here, but remember it's the y that's equal to 2 and the x is 0. 2 and 10, 4 and 18, 6 and 26. So you can see there's a pretty good line. I'm going to actually keep going. 8 and 34, just to make sure I really am lined up there. And there's my graph. Okay. All right, same process here. We have an equation, so let's figure out if this y and this x actually make sense in this equation. Does 22 equal 4 times 8 plus 2? Those of you with quick mental math skills are going to see obviously not, because 4 times 8 is 32 plus 2. Does that equal 22? Absolutely not. 34 does not equal 22. So no. How much would a 100-mile trip cost? Ooh, boy. I'm sure this is going to be a lot of money again. So we have, this is an x value, because it's miles, plus 2 is going to be 400 plus 2, which equals $402. Okay. So, let's see. The questions on the back are going to relate to this. I'm just going to grab another one just so you can see the back and the front at the same time. I don't have to keep flipping back. So, which company charges more per mile driven? So, I would say that taxi, because their rate of change is higher than the limo service. And actually, now that I've written that, I recognize that's not actually a complete sentence. I would have to say taxi charges more per mile because their rate of change is higher than a limo service. Which company charges more for the initial fee? So the initial fee is going to be what my y-intercept is. So taxi charges more for the initial fee because $6.50 is more than 2. So just to be clear, I'm going to be looking for, in these interpretive statements, can you actually make sense of the data you're given? So if you just answer a one word or without any kind of explanation, notice it says explain. So if you just say taxi charges more for the initial fee, that isn't an explanation, that's just an answer. So make sure that when you're explaining, you're actually giving your reasons for it, okay? Not just this is the answer, because that doesn't give the interpret part of it. That doesn't give the interpretation. During prom night, taxi cabs double their regular total price. Similarly, limo adds a service $50 fee to their prices. Okay, this is double, so that's times 2. Their regular total price, so that's everything. So that means rate of change is doubled and fee is doubled. So we take y equals 4x plus 2, and we're saying everything is doubled. Right? So our new y is going to be, and by the way, f of x is fine. is going to be 8x plus 4. So f of x or y are interchangeable. It's okay to use either one. So that's, and the limo service. Oh, I just realized what the mistake I made. What did I do? I said taxi cab, and then I used the limo service equation. So that's all wrong. Our original y was, our original one for taxi cabs was this. So twice that is going to be 9x plus 13. So here's our new equation. All right. Write the new equation for the limo service. This adds a $50 fee. So this is not multiplying anything. Adds, and we're only adding a fee. We're not adding that amount to the rate. So this would be what happens if we take the limo one and we add $50. F of x equals 4x plus 52. So if you were taking a 15-mile ride on prom night, which company would be less costly? Show how you know. In other words, tell me what f of 15 would be. 9 times 15 plus 13. 9 times 15. So this is 135 plus 13. Plus 13. 48. Just a note here about showing work. You notice that, like, I could have done 9 times 15 plus 13 without writing that down and just written the answer. But if I show my work, then maybe, you know, I typed it wrong into my calculator, or maybe I didn't put 9 times 15, I used the wrong rate of change. But I'm showing my work, and so if you do this on your quiz, I can say, oh, the problem was you just wrote the wrong number down. Or the problem is you got the right numbers, you just didn't calculate it correctly somehow. So that's different than if you just give me the wrong answer. If all you do is give me the answer and it's wrong, then I have to say there's no points because I just don't know what work you did. So I really encourage you to write it down. It's also a good way of checking. A lot of times, like what I just did here, I was starting to write it down. I went, oh, wait, that can't be right, because I had written it down. So always encourage, don't rush through this. Write it down. Anytime you're in a technical field in a career, even, documentation is so important. So it's a good habit to be in. All right, here we've got our function of 4 times 15 plus 52. So this is 60 plus 52, which equals 112. So 112. Less costly. Okay, there's your quiz review. Study, make sure you practice this. I would recommend, if you want a second copy, I can get you that in class. And, you know, actually do a practice quiz session where you sit down with just yourself, pen and a calculator, or a pencil and a calculator, and work through it just like you were taking a quiz. That's a good way of giving yourself some practicing the test conditions. If you ever get nervous on a test, it's a good practice. And also, you can time yourself. You might find that, oh, I whipped through that so quick, I don't have to rush so much. Or you might find that, oh, I'm really struggling on this one, it's taking so much time, maybe I need to do a little extra study. Okay, so good luck on that, and we'll see you in class.